Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Nick Files. I'm your host, Nick Muley. I know it's been about 2 weeks since I've done the last show, but I had to. Let's give a quick shout out. I already see shout outs are coming in. Hello, Irene. Good to see you. I know I was supposed to do the show last week, but unfortunately, I had to. I did have the show last week, but I had to do a completely different presentation for a very important project. So as a result, I had to reschedule part two of the slideshow we were talking about last time to today. So obviously, as you guys probably know, today we're going to continue on with part two of the true story of the Enfield poltergeist behind the movie The Conjuring 2. And I got to say right now, this is going to get really, really interesting. It's going to get really, really interesting from this point on. I mean, it was already interesting from the start, but I got a lot more to present for part two. Hello, Nigel. Good to see you. What's up, Mort? How are you? Sorry, comments weren't working there for a second. Hey, Eric. Been waiting for this. Oh, you're in for a treat, Eric. I can tell you that right now. Hi, Patricia. Good to see you. Thank you, Irene. Very much appreciate it. Hello, Rita. And let's see through the comments on the Perry Unity Network page because as a result, because I'm also broadcasting through a different type of platform, I'm not able to see exactly everybody here in the comments. So let's see who's all on Perry Unity Network. Hi, Wendy. Good to see you. Hello, Rachel. Thank you very much, Nigel. I really appreciate it. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go right into business. Yeah, get right to part two of what we were talking. Now, very quickly, for those that remember who were watching part one of 2 weeks ago, we were getting to the very bottom of when supposedly 11-year-old Janet was possessed by the spirit of the previous resident that was haunting this house, Bill Wilkins, and I gotta say that was quite a recording we were listening to because, like I said, I was just like everyone who was watching. I was also the first one ever watching it myself, so I didn't know what to expect. And there's going to be something else, like I said, that I also am going to be presenting, which I haven't seen myself. So be ready for this, guys. All right, hang on 1 second. Let me get the. I always have to play with this game all the time doing this. So give me 1 second here. Just want to make sure the slideshow is actually shown on the screen because last time I did it 2 weeks ago, for some reason it wasn't showing up on the screen. All right, there we go. Now I got it. All right, now as I always say, again, traditionally, from this point on, I won't be able to really see comments. I did figure out a way I could switch back to the presentation and page, so I will be going back and forth from time to time. So I do apologize in advance if I don't answer questions immediately, but I will be going back and forth throughout the course and period of the slideshow. So, like I said, we were talking about when Janet was supposedly possessed, and they had an entire recording and basically interview session with her. I should have stopped actually at this slide after I was done, but because I had another show that was running right after me around the time I was ending, I wasn't able to. So, but I do remember a lot of you were watching the last episode, so I think you guys get the idea of what happened the last time. So, continuing on with the way how she sounded, to rule out the possibility of Janet faking the voice, Gross taped her mouth, but the voice continued to be heard, somewhat subdued, as was the case on future occasions when Janet's mouth was also filled with water. He then asked Janet to hold water in her mouth, which she did, and the voice could still be heard talking. Gross recorded many hours of the voice by using a contact microphone placed on the back of excuse me. Gross recorded many hours of the voice by using a contact microphone placed on the back of Janet's head of what appeared to be a different and louder sound than her normal voice, the details of which are related in Melvin Willens' The Enfield Poltergeist tapes. A speech therapist approached by the investigators and who examined Janet couldn't be certain and was unable to say where the voice was coming from or how it was being sustained, though it bore some resemblance to a false vocal cord tone. John Hasted carried out an experiment together with Adrian Forkin, I guess that's how you say it, a phonetics expert at University College London. Tests with a larynograph indicated an effect known as the plica ventricularis, which is where muscle tension behind the throat can produce sounds independent of vocal cords. However, these are known side effects in this condition, and using this muscle tension to speak often results in around 6 weeks of hoarseness and extremely sore throat, and can do some serious damage. None of which happened to Janet, who would speak for up to 3 hours. Since no cause could be found, it was concluded that something was using Janet as an amplifier. Gross and Playfair decided to hypnotize Janet and called in Dr. Ian Fletcher, who was a hypnotist, surgeon, and member of the Magic Circle. Fletcher put Janet into a light state of hypnosis and asked her some questions. Do you know who was doing all this? Me and my sister. Why do you think you are to blame? I don't know who is. What does it feel like? Cold hands gripping me around my body. Who started the trouble? None of us. What is the cause of the trouble? An increase in unhappiness. Fletcher later said, the impression I formed was this is not fraud. She and her sister are doing some of these things, maybe springing out of bed. Something is forcing them to do it against their will. It was soon after this that Janet began levitating. Oh, yes. All right. Now, from this is exactly what I really wanted to show you guys for tonight. Let's just see very quickly. I just want to go back to the comments quickly just before I do the presenting on this. Give me 1 second here. Whoops, that is not what I wanted. Wrong page. Let's try that again. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's see here. Hey, Joanne, good to see you. True. Not sure what you mean by that. Good evening, Annette. Good to see you. Thank you, Patricia. I appreciate it. Hello, Natalie. That was the point I was trying to make last time. The way she was talking would stretch out. Yeah, Eric, I actually do remember when you mentioned that in the last slideshow. So you definitely beat me to it. Okay, so going back to the slideshow itself. All right, so for the first time ever, I should have also mentioned about this with you guys, but this is the first time ever I'm going to be presenting a short film for you guys to watch. So what I have recently discovered was this is an actual news segment from 1978 of film footage of the actual Enfield poltergeist investigation. It is 25 minutes long, so it is going to take a good majority of this slideshow. So I also should probably say this is going to be the one slideshow where I'm kind of speaking the least amount. It probably might be the only one I may ever do something like this. I'm not sure how this is going to work because obviously I'm very well aware about copyright, but since a lot of you guys are watching live, I would probably suggest watching it now would be the perfect time because I don't know what's going to happen after this is done. So, without further ado, I would like to present you guys film footage from the short film of the real-life Enfield poltergeist case. Hopefully, you guys can hear it.
There's a house in a terraced street in Ponders End, North London, where the events of the past 2 months have baffled all who've heard about them and scared the life out of those who've been directly involved. This is the home of Mrs. Peggy Hodgson and her family. At the moment, the children are being looked after by relatives because Mrs. Hodgson is ill in bed. The sequence of bizarre happenings which unfolded round these children and their mother in September have made the walls of the house rattle with the impact of flying objects and the sound of mysterious knockings. Soon a second family was drawn into the action, the next-door neighbours, Peggy and Vic Nottingham.
We'd been sitting listening to the knocking, and the woman next door, she called me in. We couldn't make out what it was. I heard the knocking as I walked in the front door, but I went all over the house, checked it, checked the walls, checked everything. Just couldn't make out what it was. So in the end, I thought to myself, well, there's only one thing. I'll call the police.
One of the two police officers sent to investigate made the following remarkable statement about what they heard and saw in this living room. There were 4 distinct taps on the wall, and then silence. About 2 minutes later, I heard more tapping from a different wall. The other police constable checked the walls, attic, and pipes, but could find nothing to explain the knocking. The eldest son of the family pointed to a chair next to the sofa. I then saw the chair slide across the floor. It moved approximately 3 to 4 feet and then came to rest. I checked the chair, but could find nothing to explain how it had moved.
The police definitely wanted to get out of the house.
How could you tell?
They was as frightened as I was. And then the second night we went back in there again, and we got the same reactions again. We got this knocking. And then to see a Lego. I witnessed a box of Lego underneath the chair, but I walked into the room. As I walked into the room, the Lego began to fly. But where it was coming from, I don't know. One piece hit me on the arm. And
Did it hurt?
Oh, it brought a lump up. It caught me on the elbow, and it brought a lump up. And as
Well,
I
one
say,
tiny little piece?
one tiny little piece of Lego. Now, it's not much bigger than 3/4 inch. But it caught me on the elbow. And as I say, it brought a lump up.
In the absence of a law against chairs that move on their own, the police were powerless to act. So the neighbours called in a man from the Society
Maurice
for
Gross.
Psychical Research. Maurice Gross is an inventor who devotes his leisure to investigating the supernatural. Since coming on the case, he's made several recordings of what he says are unique examples of a poltergeist in action. Tapes can, of course, be faked, but in this one, recorded in a bedroom after the family had gone to bed, the reactions of the Hodgson children to some very strange occurrences seem totally genuine.
All the lights gone out. Oh. Wait.
Throw the lamp
on the head.
right way across the room and pull it out of the socket.
Turn the lamp off.
The light plug was pulled from the socket 3 times after that. Then, after a period of watching and waiting, something even stranger happened.
Who's that shaking the door? Oh. What's something? Mum's not. Where is it? Oh! What's that?
The slipper was thrown across the room and hit
Oh,
the door
not my one.
as I was holding the door.
My one.
The white slipper hit the door as I was holding the door.
He hit me on the leg. Where's the other one?
The other one's over here.
What sort of a case is this in your experience?
Well, I think this is probably the best case this century. In fact, as far as documentation is concerned, it may be the best case of all time.
What special aspects make it so?
Well, the entity itself has been very, very violent at times, and of course the witnesses and documentation have been excellent. The violent things I've seen happen are the furniture moving, the furniture being thrown upside down. In fact, one night I was standing here, there were about 11 or 12 people in the room, and I was standing talking to one of the members of the family, and I in front of the settee, and the settee went straight up in the air and turned upside down, right in front of me, no more than a foot away from me.
What particular tape stands out in your mind?
Well, I think one particular tape that stands out in my mind is the incident where I was communicating with it quite a long while, very seriously. And then something happened which was very funny indeed.
Knock. 1 for no and 2 for yes. Are you a male spirit? 1 for no and 2 for yes. There's 2. You are a male spirit. Did you used to live in this house? You did. Was it more than 50 years ago? Yes. Did you die in this house? Did you pass on? You did pass on in this house. Now, why are you here? Are you unhappy? You're not unhappy. But why are you here? Is it because you want to give us a special message? No. You don't want to give us a special message. Are you having a game with me? Oh, right.
Oh, crumbs.
As I asked the question, are you having a game with me? It threw the cardboard box and the pillow right in my face. Well, thank you very much. That was a very good answer.
And we was all just standing in the kitchen, all of us together. And then all of a sudden, a pool of water come from nowhere in the middle of the floor in the kitchen. And then we heard the toilet chain pull. And there was no one at all out in the toilet. We was all in the kitchen. And the door opened in the toilet. Then the chain went. And as we walked out there, the toilet brush came from the thing what it was in, the container. And the brush just come up and settled on top of the toilet. Just like that, as if someone had just got in there, pulled the chain and then took the brush up and to wash the toilet. And the doors, and then the bathroom door opens and the kitchen table has just tipped up. And there's Janet, one of the girls, she's been just sitting on the chair and she's been thrown completely across the room.
There's a child's chair, I bet it weighs about 10 pounds, padded one with metal legs. And the child is sleeping in a single bed one side of the room, and I was sitting on a single bed the other side of the room, with his chair in the middle. The child went to sleep, and all of a sudden she got a little bit restless. Well, just after that, his chair was lifted off the ground, and it was thrown about 9 foot through the air, a good 9 foot, for no reason whatsoever. No one was on the end of it. Didn't touch no one, just went a straight line down the room.
And what did you do?
I ran out the room again. You know, I mean, when you see these things, there's nothing on the end of them. You begin to shake.
The third family to be caught up in the story was John and Sylvia Burkham, who live a few doors away. John is Mrs. Hodgson's brother, and he and Sylvia have spent hours at the Hodgson's house, trying to help them through all the unexplained goings-on. But they've had plenty of shocks of their own. Now, what happened in this bedroom?
Well, I heard a noise downstairs. I come up, and there was the eldest girl on the floor. But the other one's missing. So I look under this bed, I look under this one, and as I stand up, I see it. There she is, across this radio, one leg in the air, and her head hanging down. Just to prove that I wasn't mad, I yelled for my wife to come up to see what I have just seen. But she was asleep.
As a roof repairer, Vic Nottingham is used to tall stories, but he never thought he'd play a leading role in one like this.
I've got one chap at work, for instance, and he says to me, "How's your ghost getting on?" Now, I mean, it's no good talking to a chap like that, because he's got no reaction on it whatsoever. He thinks that I'm going around the bloody bend, like, you know what I mean? But
do you think you are?
Well, I was straight. I mean, I'm 44, and I've never witnessed anything like it before in my life. But the only thing that worries me, see, being a roofer by trade, is beginning to get on top of you. Your nerves begin to shudder a little bit.
In every story of things that go bump in the night, there are two possibilities. One, that it's a hoax. Two, that there's something going on beyond the grasp of the human mind. If this is a hoax, it means that some of the 17 people who've seen things have been playing an elaborate and twisted joke on the others. If it isn't a hoax, it means that either those 17 people have all been having hallucinations, including the police, or this is the best documented ghost story of all time.
Can you tell me why you are upsetting this family? Is it because you enjoy doing it? You do enjoy doing it. But I suggest that now you've got... Now, what does that mean? Why have you done 3 knocks? Now, I ask you the question again. 2 knocks for yes, and 1 knock for no. Now, yes, that's right, you understand. Now, do you enjoy upsetting this family? You do? Well, now, will you please go away? Because I think you've had enough of your jokes. You won't go away. But I would like you to go away, and go away because I think you've been upsetting this family long enough, and it's time you went away. Do you understand me? Please go away. Yes, you must go away. It's absolutely essential that you go away. No, you mustn't be obstinate. You must go away. Well, you must. I'm sorry, but you must stop annoying this family. You've had enough. You've had a good time. Now, please go away. All right? Please go away. I can't say any more to you now. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Oh, there's those images.
These teenage sisters believe they're haunted.
Now the actual
by a
family.
poltergeist.
I was going to ask the same question as I asked earlier. How many voices are there?
600.
600 the voices.
I know the joke.
How many really are there, Margaret?
I think so far we've had 10 sensible voices, but the rest of the names are absolute rubbish.
11-year-old Janet Hodgson appears to be the focus of many of the strange happenings in Green Street. But they also affect her 14-year-old sister, Margaret, and their younger brother, Billy. One of the first manifestations was when Lego bricks began to fly at high speed around the living room.
How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?
It's not haunted. Shut up.
Why isn't it haunted?
I don't know.
Does it frighten you, the things that happen here?
Oh, well, it did first, but now I've got more used to it. And you learn to accept the things that happen. It's slung covered it, Mum. Might eat it, Mum. Slung a bookshelf at Margaret.
Have you tried telling it to go away?
Yes, many times.
And what does it reply?
No, it won't. It's staying another 6-7 years.
The local police could find no explanation for the knocking either. They were even more baffled when 2 of their beat constables reported seeing an armchair levitate across the Hodgsons' living room.
It came off the floor, or nearly a half inch, I should say, and I saw it slide off to the right, about 3.5 to 4 feet before it came to rest. I checked to see whether or not it could possibly have slid along the floor. I placed a marble on the floor to see whether or not the marble would go in the same direction as the chair did, and it didn't. It didn't roll at all. I checked for wires under the cushion of the chair, and I could find no explanation at all.
Maurice Gross is an electronics engineer and an investigator for the Society for Psychical Research.
Over here was Janet, and over here in this bed here was Margaret.
It was in the same bedroom a month later, with all the family present, that Morris Gross first challenged the poltergeist to talk.
And this was actually the result. You'll hear the whistling first of all, and then the barking. And here is this noise. The barking here is quite extraordinary, actually.
We got a dog in here.
I then said to it, as I said on the tape here, I then said to it, if you can whistle and bark and groan, then you can talk. And I asked it to actually say my name.
Well, just a minute. Right, we'll try again. I want you to call out my name. My complete name. Morris Gross. See if you can do that. Hello. Very good. Let me hear you say my name again. Come on, let me hear you say my name. Come on, my name's Morris. Let me hear you say it. Morris.
Now that was the first time we heard the voice, and since then we've been hearing it again and again, and it's been getting louder and louder.
What about the voices? When did the voices start?
December the 12th.
December the 12th?
Yes.
And how did they start?
Well, one night Mr. Grove was talking about it about 8:30. He said, all we need now is the voices to talk. And that night we went to bed, and I can't remember exactly what happened. And
what's that knocking?
yeah, that's, you can hear it now. I was doing that yesterday morning, and Peggy was on her own. So she come in to us, because it wasn't her, she come in. We sat together and we heard it. And I counted how many knocks, and there was 14 altogether. And it's doing it again now.
That was 3 knocks just now.
Yes, it goes in 3s and 2s. When we first got contacted, this was when Mr. Rose said, if there's anyone there, knock twice for yes, and if not, one for no.
I wonder if we did that now, whether it would answer. Is anybody there? Is anybody there? Nothing. No.
It doesn't always do it to order. No, it doesn't. It goes in spasms. Like we're talking now. It may not now, after you've said that, but it won't do it when you want it to, straight away. No.
What about the voices? They sometimes say things and make answers. Is that the voice now?
Yeah.
Is anybody there? How many voices are there?
Dirty Dick, Andrew Garner, and Stuart Thurton.
Dirty Dick, Andrew Gardner, and Stuart
Thurton.
Oh, has he ever spelt that for you?
No. Mr. Ghost asked him, but it's like distract Mr. Ghost last night when he asked. Or some time ago.
And what do you think these are? Are they people or are they just voices?
Could be spirits, I don't know. I believe it's a ghost, a spirit speaking for us somehow. No. We don't get this at school, these voices are. Because when we're all separate, it's not so strong.
Just when you come near each other.
Yeah, like here, or our aunts were like they're together, or in Peggy's next door.
And Janet's, your voice is stronger, isn't it? It seems to be the strongest.
Yeah.
When you hear the voice and it comes out, where does it come from? Here, in your throat?
No.
Where do you feel it comes from?
Back of the neck. Back of the neck.
And so it must be as if it's somebody else speaking there when you hear it.
Behind us.
And do you get the feeling when you hear the voice that there is a person there?
Yes.
Yeah. And do they tell you much about themselves?
Not really, no.
They just tend to growl and
play around and sort of joke and be silly. Yeah.
I wonder, do you think there's anyone there just now?
Yeah, I do.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that, Janet?
Pardon? Stuart Certain.
Stuart Certain, and he's one of the voices.
Yeah.
Why do you think he comes and speaks through you?
To annoy us.
Does he ever say anything nice?
Well, don't know really.
Shall we try and speak to him? No. We'll see if he'll speak to us.
Yeah.
Is anybody there?
No.
Who's there?
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who?
Goose Chase is here.
Mr. Gross, a lot of people, hearing these voices produced by the children, will simply say that they are very good ventriloquists and that this is all a hoax. How would you react to that?
Certainly not. They're certainly not very good ventriloquists. We have had tests on them to see whether they can ventriloquize. They can't. To keep up this particular type of voice for any length of time without damage to the vocal cords is absolutely impossible. I mean, there must be some hoarseness attached to it. But don't forget, these children don't do this for a couple of minutes or so. They do it for lengths of periods up to 3 hours, and without any hoarseness or sore throats whatsoever. Well, perhaps, Guy, perhaps you've got something to say to them.
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you make this noise without bashing Janet's vocal cords to pieces. If I do it for half a minute, I get a sore throat. Joe?
Guy Lyon Playfair is an author of books on the paranormal, with experience of poltergeist cases in Europe and Brazil.
How do you do it, mate?
God, hours.
Don't you ever get a sore throat, Janet?
No.
Sure.
Yeah.
You never get pain in the back of the neck or something?
No. Oh, what do you mean? I'm sorry, I'm not with you. What? I feel.
Oh, you're with me now? With you?
Sensation in the back of the neck. Yeah.
Well, tell us about that.
I don't know how to
No,
explain
tell me about that. You get it now? Buzzing in the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Do you feel it vibrating as if it was sort of
no, like someone
what?
got their hand on the back of my neck like that.
Poltergeists seem to thrive on an atmosphere of tension that is partly sexual. The fact that most of the focuses are adolescents seems to contribute to the mischievous nature of the effects, leading some to suggest that the kids are faking or enjoying a laugh at the expense of the investigators. But to create all the bizarre effects that went on in this house either involves a gigantic conspiracy with the neighbors or a disruption in our laws of mind and matter.
All right. And yep, we are officially done. That was really interesting. Definitely way different than how they portrayed it in the Conjuring 2 film. Let me go back very quickly just to see everyone who commented. I know I showed them earlier. Let's see what we got. I know Eric was commenting a few times. There's still no proof that it was demonic, though. And anything angry, yes, but not demonic. I agree with you 100% on that, Eric. I honestly, I didn't think so either. With all these people, those people coming in and out, no wonder it was getting stronger, using all that extra energy. Yep. Yeah, definitely. Hello, Charles. Good to see you. What's going on, Natalie? All right, so continuing onwards then, because we still have quite a lot to go through. So on Thursday, December 15th at 11:45 a.m., Hazel Short, the local lollipop lady, had been walking towards 284 to pick up her lollipop sign, which she normally concealed under the head of the front of the house when she witnessed Janet floating around her room. Short later told Playfair, "I was standing there looking at the house when all of a sudden a couple of books came flying across and hit the window. It was so sudden, I heard the noise because it was so quiet. There was no traffic, and it made me jump. Then after a little while, I saw Janet. I don't know if there's a bed underneath the window, but she was going up and down bodily as though someone was tossing her up and down. It was though someone was tossing her up and down bodily in a horizontal position, like as if someone had gotten hold of her legs and back and throwing her up and down. I definitely saw her come up about window height, but I thought if she was bouncing, she'd bounce from her feet. She wouldn't be able to get enough power to bounce off her back to come up that high. My friend could see her as well. We both could see her." On Saturday, December 17th, the chair and table were once again overturned in the Hodgson's kitchen, seen here in this photograph. On Friday, December 23rd, the family goldfish died, and Bill admitted that he had electrocuted them in their tank using spirit energy. On Saturday, Christmas Eve, Janet was found with a curtain wrapped around her neck. Peggy managed to untangle her, saving her from suffocating. According to Janet, the most frightening encounter was when a curtain wrapped itself around my neck next to my bed. Just basically seems to tell the same thing. On Sunday, Christmas Day, the pet parakeet was found dead in its cage. Janet later complained that a knife was following her around upstairs, and Peggy found one of the knives she had just put away on the stairs. Janet later said, "I was used and abused. There was levitation, and there was voices, and then there was the curtain wrapped itself around my neck." Okay, this is what I think it was supposed to say. Curtain that wrapped itself around my neck, which was quite life-threatening for me, and brought it home to me that this could kill you. Early in January 1978, Margaret started to speak in a similar harsh voice, but without the same intensity or duration as Janet's. On Sunday, January 15th, which was Peggy's birthday, writing in fecal matter that appeared, fecal matter. Geez, I'm having trouble speaking today. That appeared on the wall. This was followed by a few days of puddles of diarrhea that was sent for testing at a lab and came back as cat urine. Peggy also saw a man from the waist down walking up her stairs. On Monday, January 16th, "I am Fred" was found on the bathroom tape written with electrical tape. Bathroom door, written with electrical tape. That's the actual photograph of the message right there. Many people witnessed paranormal events, as I mentioned last time. witnessed paranormal events over the 18 months of the poltergeist activity, but numerous experiments had confirmed that eyewitness testimony can be unreliable, as observers often see what they expect to see. Dingwall, Goldney, and Hall, who worked on the Borley Rectory case in 1956, argued that the influence of suggestion played a large part of what people saw or heard. Once in the mind of the affected, belief can be strengthened and simple events misinterpreted in order to fit them into the desired pattern. This is confirmation bias, which is the tendency to interpret new evidence as confirmation of existing beliefs or theories. Confirmation bias, alongside poor memory and consensus reporting, mean that strong evidence is needed alongside witness testimony. Throughout the 18-month period, a number of additional paranormal researchers visited the house, including famed demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren, who in 1978 only stayed for a few days. So I think it's probably worth saying at this point that in spite of what The Conjuring 2 shows, it showed that the Warrens played a huge role in it, when in reality, that wasn't the case. As like I just said, they actually were only there for a few days, and the details following them with Enfield is actually kind of rather vague and limited. There's just not very much information I was able to find. Even when I was searching for the info on them, I couldn't really find too much about them. And this is one of the very few photographs. In fact, I think this was the only photograph I ever saw of, in this case, Lorraine with the family. Though The Conjuring 2 takes liberties with time and the extent to which the Warrens were involved with the case, they publicly stated that they were convinced that the supernatural were responsible for the strange happenings inside the house. Those who deal with the supernatural day in and day out know the phenomena are there. There's no doubt about it, Ed said, according to Fangoria. Playfair claimed that the Warrens did not truly investigate the case and expressed frustration with the movie, which dramatizes the Enfield case and, according to Playfair, greatly exaggerates the Warrens' involvement. Despite his involvement in the case, Playfair does not feature as a character in the film. A variety of other methods of investigation were undertaken by a number of people between August 1977 and October 1978. On Tuesday, May 16th, the SPR formed and set up a committee to examine and carry out their own investigation. The investigation by Gross and Playfair, consisting of Mary Rose Barrington, Hugh Pincott, Peter Halson, and John Stiles. For some reason, I could not find any of the other pictures of the other team members except for John. Why exactly, I have no clue, but this is the only photo I was able to find of one of them. They carefully interviewed many of the witnesses, considered much of the testimony to be clear and convincing. They also sought expertise from Charles Moses, an experienced investigator from the Southern California Society for Psychical Research, an experienced... Okay, I don't know why that's showing up, an experienced investigator. I'll have to fix that later. The committee concluded that there was good evidence for paranormal phenomena, described by the credible informants and various witnesses, though judgment was reserved on incidents that could not have been clearly observed, or where witnesses were found to not be entirely convincing. They were wary of attributing a paranormal origin to Janet's other voice. However, they were reluctant to give credibility to the voice of Bill Watkins. That's supposed to be Bill Wilkins. Mary Rose Barrington felt personally satisfied that paranormal events took place at Enfield, and considered the tearing away of the fireplace an item of poltergeistery of the First Order. On Tuesday, July 25th, the family sent Janet to the Maudsley Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital in South London, and the incidents died down, even though the family still saw apparitions. Jamie underwent extensive physical and psychological assessment at the Institute of Neuropsychiatry under Dr. Peter Fenwick, and nothing was found to be wrong with her, including brain damage or epilepsy. Janet returned on Friday, September 1st, after being away for nearly 6 weeks, and within an hour saw the apparition of a little boy. That's new. Okay. On Monday, October 2nd, they called in another medium, a Dutch healer and clairvoyant by the name Dono Jim. I can't even say that last name. I can clearly see that's Dutch. I can't even say that right. Jmeg Mailing, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know how to pronounce it. Who came to the house and traveled along the astral plane. He was certain that a 24-year-old woman was involved in the case. As already noted previously, Maurice Gross had a daughter, also named Janet, who died in a crash aged 24, and it was this that had led him to become a member of the SPR. After Dono identified the 24-year-old woman, the incidents tapered off and then stopped. The story was regularly covered in the Daily Mirror newspaper until reports came to an end in 1979, while the experts couldn't agree on a logical explanation. See, I've always heard, and I know I did a similar case like this a couple months back, but it's pretty typical on many occasions where you have a whole bunch of poltergeist activity that will erupt within a span of several months, maybe even a year or two. And after a period of this, it all vanishes completely. And that's pretty common with what you see with a lot of these poltergeist cases, as it starts off, relatively unusual. The family usually is taken by, obviously taken by surprise. They can't really explain a lot of what's going on. And of course, they try to debunk it, but then eventually they're no longer able to. So it's typical for them to experience such activity like this for several months, up to a year or two, before it eventually all comes to an end. Almost like just as quickly as it started, it just ended very quickly. And after that, they didn't really have any more experiences afterwards. Now, I should probably say on a more cinematic kind of case, believe it or not, Steven Spielberg's Poltergeist was based on a documented haunting in England, presumably Enfield, according to the film's scriptwriter Dan Aykroyd, which I didn't know that he was the scriptwriter for it. So that's something new that I've learned about this movie. A 3-part dramatization of the events was broadcast in May 2015 by Sky Living under the title The Enfield Haunting, featuring Timothy Spall as Maurice Gross and Matthew McFadden as Guy Playfair. Playfair was consulted by the program makers, but commented later that the result bore little relation to the actual events, with almost none of the phenomena shown have anything to do with the real ones. The program contained notable inaccuracy, such as the use of CCTV, not available at the time, and omitted key features such as Janet's alleged levitation. The events would also become the inspiration for The Conjuring 2, released almost 40 years after the events in 2016. Now, to give, because I did this with the last movie, with the first Conjuring movie, in case you guys happen to wonder, was there anything unusual that occurred on set? Unlike the first one, there wasn't as much for the second. So, not necessarily I would put this as an unexplained or paranormal event, but I still thought it was worth putting up. But while promoting the film in June 2016, star Vera Farmiga was still suffering from a swollen lymph node she received during filming, due to the intense screaming she had to perform. Due to technical challenges, she would sometimes do 50 takes in a row, all featuring her screaming. Now, just like it was with the first movie, a cinema about to have a showing of The Conjuring 2 had a poster that said, "Warning, the film you are about to see is psychologically and emotionally disturbing." People who have attended early screenings of the film have complained about many unusual circumstances that they have experienced after seeing the film. And to support the theory added on the poster was, "Due to our concern for your well-being, we have invited Father Perez to be here. He will be available after the film to provide spiritual support and or conduct a personal blessing should you feel the need. Please do not hesitate to seek help. Ask a representative where you can sign up for a session with our priest." I like how it says here in the actual poster saying, "Do not watch it alone." Now, getting to some of the skeptical sides. Just before we get to the skeptical side of things, let's see. Okay, there hasn't been any new comments lately, so okay, we're good then. All right, so the story became a sensation, drawing in experts and skeptics from around the world. Of course, many cast their doubts on the events, claiming the children were behind the elaborate hoax and were faking their demonic symptoms from the start. And the debate around the Enfield case continues today. Two SBR experts adamantly questioned Janet's gruff voice and later caught the children bending spoons themselves. Even Playfair observed in his case notes that Wilkins generally refused to speak unless the girls were alone in the room with the door closed, and that the Hodgson children were motivated to add to the activity with some tricks of their own. Playfair wrote that when Janet knew cameras were on, nothing seemed to happen. But Gross and Playfair were believers. As for the Warrens, they did, as I said before, they did really come from the U.S. to Enfield in 1978, a little after the case had died down. "I was never involved in that. They banged on the door a year later and got whatever they wanted," says Bentz dismissively. They were true believers. Now, you couldn't record the dangerous, threatening atmosphere inside that little house, the late Ed Warren recounted, but you could film the levitations and teleportations and dematerializations of people and objects that were happening there, not to mention the many hundreds of hours of tape recordings made of these spirits' voices speaking out loud in the rooms. The family... Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder why pictures are not showing up. Now they're starting to. The family and direct neighbors believed the phenomenon to be real. Those who knew Peggy Hodgson had no doubts about her personal integrity. However, some potentially credible witnesses disputed the veracity of the phenomenon, often after just a few visits and in some cases without having visited at all. Media coverage was typically trivial and sensationalist, with headlines such as "Terror for Family" and "Spook Riddle," such as these newspaper articles I'm showing. Ghost hunters clash over mystery of spook or spoof kids. And Phantom Fred is a force to fear, accompanied by a ghostly image of Playfair. Yeah, here's actually some of the larger newspaper articles that were involved in the case. I'll leave it up for a minute so you guys can check it out for yourselves. I know it's a little bit hard to read, but in case you guys can read it, I'll leave it up for just a minute. And wasn't there... Oh, wait, yeah, there's one more. Okay, there was one more. I was trying to think, wasn't there one right in the between the middle of it? And yeah, I was right. Let's check as far as comments go. Check on the Para-Unity Network. Hello, Candace. Good to see you. Okay. All right. So, moving forward. Now, Anita Gregory concluded that the case was overrated, and many skeptics accused the Hodgson family of making up the haunting for fame or financial gain. At different points, the investigators caught. Oh, wait, I already said that. Yeah. The investigators caught the girls bending spoons themselves and banging on ceilings with broom handles. Like in the movie, catching the girls in the act seemed to be enough for Gregory and others to close the case. Gregory alleged that John Burcombe told her that Janet taught herself the trick of talking in a deep voice and that she enjoyed keeping strangers hopping about. Gregory also stated that Peggy Nottingham had told her what was going on now was pure nonsense, and it was kept going by the investigators. After rejoinders from Gross, Gregory repeated her suspicion regarding the paranormality of the girls' voices and her belief that Playfair's book was far too sketchy, unsystematic, imprecise, ambiguous, and confusing to be seen as a contribution to research. In a later response to Gregory, Gross defended himself against her criticisms and pointed out that she had conceded the case included some good evidence in testimony, being answered in turn by Gregory with more criticisms, including a complaint about the lack of evidential video footage. That's the thing too, is I remember in the second in The Conjuring 2 that there was video footage that they were showing of supposedly Janet causing some of the things to occur, but as of now, at least as far as I'm concerned, there is no. If it was truly filmed, I have not found any evidence whatsoever of that video footage. Either it's very heavily unavailable, or it may have never been filmed at all. So something tells me here, though, that it probably was never really videotaped. Melvin Harris, an author of debunking books, analyzed the photographs in This House is Haunted, concluding that they showed the girls indulging in spirited hijinks and forcefully denying that they could be held to represent paranormal events. Oh, whoops, I forgot to put one other picture up. That was my mistake. In reply, Playfair defended the photographs as follows. On the current twisting sequence suggests that the curtains has simply been hit by the bedclothes and knocked off the window ledge. He does not explain how the curtain that then moves into the room, as it can plainly be seen to do in the first picture, instead of towards the window, as one might expect. Nor does he explain how it moves to the right, the opposite direction to that of the bedclothes, and then twists into a tight spiral. See, it's been a while since I've seen the slideshow, but I will point out this. That is a photo of Peggy. Excuse me, not Peggy. Geez, I'm losing. It's been a long day for me today. It's yeah, I'm right. Yeah, that is a photo of her showing the bed sheet. It's going to be the window curtain that supposedly strangled Janet. In the pillow sequence, he does not explain how the top pillow doubles up in midair and changes direction, which it clearly does. Had both pillows been thrown with one hand by Rose, they would presumably have followed the same trajectory and landed together, which they do not. Such movements, he says, easily corresponds with those to be found in commonplace, everyday events, not in the world I live in. Rose and Playfair published further reflections some years later. Here they drew attention to the large number of written and spoken testimonies from witnesses. They described in detail the constant and anomalous problems that they and professionals had experienced with sound and video recording equipment when trying to capture evidence. They bewailed the lack of balance shown in some sections of the media, denouncing the many inaccuracies, distortions, half-truths, and blatant lies about the Enfield case that have found their way over the years into print or radio and TV programs. Some journalists, they revealed, had tried unsuccessfully to bribe a next door neighbor. Excuse me, I got that wrong. That was my fault. I said about Peggy, that was my fault. They reveal had tried unsuccessfully to bribe a next door neighbor, Mrs. Nottingham, with £1,000 if she would state that the events were all a pack of lies. She and her family subsequently made signed statements repudiating allegations of faking. Oh, that was a quick slide. Although Playfair maintained the haunting was genuine and wrote in his later book, This House is Haunted, the true story of a poltergeist, that an entity was to blame for the Enfield disturbances, he often doubted the children's veracity and wondered if they were playing tricks and exaggerating. Gross and Playfair concluded that Margaret and Janet had sometimes tried to trick them, but insisted these occasions were very few, that they were quickly discovered, and that the girls then admitted their deceit. Still, Gross and Playfair believed that even though some of the alleged poltergeist activity was faked by the girls, other incidents were genuine. Such here is Maurice Gross presenting more of the items that were supposedly either bent or thrown by the poltergeist. Indeed, they held that it would have been a normal life if the children had not tried to copy what they were seeing all around them. Oh, this is one of the few photos of all the siblings together. But to add to it, in fact, this is something that's very important in my opinion. In fact, in 1980, Janet admitted to ITV that she and her siblings fabricated a few events, including the demonic voices. Oh yeah, once or twice we faked it, just to see if Mr. Gross and Mr. Playfair would catch us. They always did, she said, according to the DM. There's a BBC Scotland interview in which the two girls are asked, how does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist? Janet replies, it's not haunting. And Margaret interrupts, shut up. That actually, if you guys were watching earlier, that segment is in the film that I just presented. So upon hearing that, I thought, oh, that's right. That had to have been one of the few times that they were faking it, but it does make a lot more sense now upon watching the actual footage. Later, she said about 2% of the events in the house were faked and still maintained that they only made up a small number of the happenings. But what about the other 98%? Many other investigators outside the SPR visited the Hodgson house in those 18 months, including the Warrens. While Ed and Lorraine didn't have to save the kids from any demonic nuns in real life, whatever they did see while at the house seemed to convince them that supernatural forces were indeed at work. Oh, wait, this is the same stuff that was just written earlier. Okay, I'm going to have to get rid of that earlier. I don't know why it's showing that again. Arguably, the most credible witnesses, Douglas Bentz and Graham Norris, stand by their accounts. News reporters are a pretty hard, cynical bunch in general, and I had a reputation of being a skeptic, says Bentz. And Graham is a man of huge integrity. He maintains it was impossible for the girls to have faked it in such a crowded room. I do believe that there are forces and energies on the planet that aren't explained by science, he says. I don't believe in ghosts, if that's what you mean. And of course, the human brain has enough power to invent things. Surely the screaming would have served as a distraction. There was no motive for them to do that. They didn't make any money out of this. They weren't that kind of family, and the effect on them was marked. Meanwhile, an American stage magician named Milbourne Christopher dropped by and briefly investigated the Enfield case on December 19th and failed to observe anything that could be called paranormal. After having had used his illusionist skills in his interactions with Janet and ultimately claiming possible trickery on her part, a hidden tape recorder that Milbourne didn't know about that was recording their interactions together tell us differently. Both Guy Lee and Playfair forgot to space this all out, so normally I don't really have it this much together like this. Both Guy Leon Playfair and Maurice Grosse came away with the idea that visitors to Enfield would find what they wanted to find. If someone is skeptical and seeks out trickery, they will find it. And the opposite often holds true likewise. Milbourne was dismayed by what he felt was suspicious activity on the part of Janet, later concluding that the poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever. Ray Allen, a ventriloquist, visited the house and concluded Janet was playing trick with Bill's voice because she enjoyed the attention. He felt that the voice was being produced via the diaphragm, but this was disputed by Grosse and Playfair. Grosse was so convinced of the paranormal origin of the effect that he offered £500, later £1,000, to a nominated charity if any child could replicate the voice under the terms he specified. Nobody took his offer. He was further encouraged in his conviction that the voice had an unknown source when reading of similar historical cases from people suffering possession. For example, excuse me, at the moment when the countenance alters, a more or less changed voice issues from the mouth of the person in the fit. The top register of the voice is displaced. The feminine voice is transformed into a bass one. There have been more recent reports of a similar phenomenon, which I do have an example of. In 2012, Professor Richard E. Gallagher, of New York Medical College, reported the case of a woman referred to as Julia, who sometimes spontaneously entered a trance state and uttered obscenities in voices completely different from her own. In 2014, another example right here. Forgot to, again, space this one out. Excuse me. Police in Indiana in the U.S. investigated a case where the children of Latoya Ammons displayed what she took to be signs of demonic possession, such as speaking in unnaturally deep voices. I already know what this case is, honestly, now that I think about it. And arguably, the most credible witnesses, Benson Norris, stand by their accounts. See, it's showing some of the same information again. I don't know why it's doing that. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the name of Latoya Ammons, I know it's been the subject of controversy, but she was the only... When we're talking about an area in Indiana, we're talking about, and it's only about an hour away from me, we're talking about a town called Gary, Indiana, and Latoya Ammons was the owner of the demon of the demon house, which is still to this day still under the subject of debate if it really was actually possessed. See, this is some of the same. I don't know how I put all the same information in, so that wasn't supposed to happen. Skeptic Joe Nickell of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, CSICOP, examined the findings of paranormal investigators and criticized them for being overly credulous. When a supposedly disembodied demonic voice was heard, Playfair noted that, as always, Janet's lips hardly seemed to be moving. He states that a remote-controlled still camera, the photographer was not present in the room with the girls, time to take a picture every 15 seconds was shown by investigator Melvin Harris to reveal pranking by the girls. He argues that a photo allegedly depicting Janet levitating actually shows her bouncing off the bed as if it were a trampoline. Harris called the photos examples of common gymnastics and said it's worth remembering that Janet was a school sports champion. Nickell pointed out that a tape recorder malfunction that Grosse attributed to supernatural activity, and which SPR President David Fontana described with an occurrence which appeared to defy the laws of mechanics, was a peculiar threading jam occurring with older model reel-to-reel tape recorders. He also said that Ed Warren was notorious for exaggerating and even making up incidents in such cases, often transforming a haunting case into one of demonic possession. In 2015, Deborah High commented that there was no solid evidence for the Enfield poltergeist. The first thing to note is that the occurrences didn't happen under controlled circumstances. People frequently see what they expect to see, their senses being organized and shaped by their prior experiences and beliefs. Skeptics have argued that the alleged poltergeist voice, once again, that originated from Janet, was produced by false vocal cords above the larynx and the phraseology and vocabulary of a child. In a television interview this is showing some of the same stuff again. Yeah, it says Janet was observed to gain attention by waving her hand and putting her hand in front of her mouth while a claimed disembodied voice was heard. I don't know how I missed these. I don't know how I missed this. Okay, but moving forward, again, like I said, a lot of this will be fixed later on in case I ever want to do this one again. As a magician experienced in the dynamics of trickery, Nichol examined Playfair's account as well as contemporary press clippings. He noted that the supposed poltergeist tended to only act when it was not being watched, and concluded that the incidents were best explained as children's pranks. Although Gross made tape recordings of Janet and believed no trickery was involved, the magician Bob Cody said, "He made some of the recordings available to me, and having listened to them very carefully, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing in what I had heard that was beyond the capabilities of an imaginative teenager." All of the recordings have, now in case, if you guys want to know where all the recordings are, all the recordings have been cataloged and digitalized by the Society for Psychical Research, and a book for their content was produced by Dr. Melvin William in 2019, which is called The Enfield Poltergeist Capes. It's actually a book I'm kind of interested in eventually purchasing, and be nice to figure out where I could find the recordings themselves so I could hear all of the recordings. A 2016 article by psychology professor Chris French in Time Out magazine described 5 reasons why he believed the case to have been a hoax. His reasons are the 2 sisters involved admitting hoaxing some of the activity, the photo of Janet levitating above her bed could just as easily be explained as Janet jumping, the spirit of an old man who supposedly possessed Janet took a great deal of interest in menstruation, eyewitnesses are notoriously unreliable, and other schoolgirl pranks before and after had gone out of hand. Roz Morris, as I mentioned last week, 2 weeks ago, covered the story at the time for BBC Radio. It wasn't long before she joined Maurice Gross for an all-night vigil while the family was asleep. After the girls went to bed, there was a very loud crash upstairs in their bedroom. Morris went upstairs, and it appeared something had moved a chair across the room, a distance of about 9 feet. She felt this would have been impossible for the girls to do as they were actually in bed. She said at the time, something chucked the chair across the room. I'm convinced of that. There were many bystanders who thought the family invented it all, using basic conjuring tricks in order to get a new and better council home. But although Mrs. Hodgson was a single mother with 4 children, Roz Morris disputes this possible motivation. She had a good house, as far as she was concerned, and in fact, she stayed in it. That's where she died in 2003. The journalist admits that at the beginning, she herself was very skeptical and looking out for any ways in which trickery could be involved. But after she found Mrs. Hodgson to be sincere and undoubtedly very frightened. Richard Gross rules out a financial motive. They never made any money out of it. Graham Morris backs this up, maintaining that checkbook journalism simply didn't exist in those days. Let's see what Rachel just said here. Has anyone done a paranormal investigation after this with new technology? Unfortunately, to answer your question, Rachel, unfortunately, it is not, because to this day, at least as far as I know, the house where it all occurred is still a private residence, and whoever lives there today, I mean, unless they've been secretive about it, they have not allowed any investigations into the house. And as far as I also know, too, no other type of activity has occurred in the house since then. So, but it would be interesting to see an investigation of, with a lot of the modern day equipment be used. So, yeah, as of right now, it's still a private residence. He rejects claims that Janet Hodgson had Tourette's syndrome. This voice, once it started to go, would talk incessantly for 2-3 hours. And after his father, Maurice, said the same of ventriloquism, to keep up this particular voice for any length of time without any damage to the vocal cords is absolutely impossible. Janet, the victim of the haunting, takes a robust view of the skeptics. I don't care what they think. I know what had happened, and I know it was real. Despite the movie's happy ending, the real-life case was never truly closed. Janet told Daily Mail in 2015 that things began to quiet down in the fall of 1978 when a priest visited the house. When the Enfield poltergeist event subsided and the press attention faded, the family faced various challenges. Years later, Janet called the events she lived through in that house traumatic, revealing that she had a short spell at a psychiatric hospital and that she and her siblings were severely bullied at school, where her classmates called her Ghost Girl and freaks from the ghost house. She told Daily Mail that her mother also had a nervous breakdown. It's not surprising then that Janet wasn't very happy to hear about the film being made about the Enfield case, as it dug up old memories she'd hoped to leave behind when she married young and moved out of the house at age 16. But the family continued to experience further misfortunes. But The Conjuring 2 wasn't the first disguise. I don't know where that came from. Wasn't the first to dramatize the events of the Enfield case. I'm sure, because I know we got quite a number. I know a few people from the UK are watching this right now. I'm sure some of you guys probably remember this, but the BBC's controversial 1992 mockumentary Ghostwatch took a rather different approach. Disguised as a special live investigation of a haunted house on Halloween night, the 90-minute program was hosted by real-life broadcaster Michael Parkinson and featured several other TV presenters to lend it an air of credibility. The mockumentary had a call-in number of viewers who could dial. Even had a call-in number of viewers could dial into to share their own ghost stories. While the reporters are highly skeptical of the hauntings at first, strange things begin to happen that become more difficult to explain as the film progresses. And Ghostwatch crescendos when the reporters and their paranormal expert realize they've fallen prey to a very real poltergeist. The terrifying final scene of the film proved so controversial that the BBC received thousands of complaints after airing, as well as calls from frightened viewers who thought the program was real. The BBC never aired Ghostwatch again, although it is now available online. I just found out, in fact, it's available freely in case anyone wants to check it out. It's available freely on Internet Archive on the video section. And also, I believe it's on Tubi TV, both of which you can check out for free. So, yeah, it hasn't been on television since then, but it's still I know it's available online on those sites. In spite of this, today the film is considered a cult classic among horror enthusiasts. But in the end, The Conjuring 2 and Ghostwatch are just two more chapters in a story that continues to fascinate believers and skeptics alike more than 45 years later. And despite many attempts to investigate the case or dramatize it, No one but the Hodgsons will ever know what truly happened inside that house in Enfield. Professional skeptics continue to criticize the Enfield investigation. Now, in case you guys wonder what was in fact really the fate of the family themselves, Anita Gregory, one of the many visitors to Enfield, as well as the investigators, not just the family themselves. Anita Gregory, one of the many visitors to visit Enfield, who concluded in her brief investigation that the girls had staged certain events and felt that the evidence in the case had been greatly exaggerated, died on November 7th, 1984, at the age of 59. Dr. John Beloff, another one of the skeptical members, died on June 1st, 2006, at the age of 86. Maurice Grosse remained in contact with the family until his death on October 14th that same year at the age of 87, several months after Beloff's death. He spent much of his time towards the end of his life defending his investigation of the haunting of the Enfield events, writing articles for a wide range of publications and speaking at conferences. You know, I gotta say, for a man like Maurice Grosse, who really took the such investigations very seriously, I'm just gonna flat out say this was someone I really wish I could have met. I probably wouldn't be the first to say this, especially on this network. I'm sure a lot of us here on this network, especially a lot of those who live out in the UK, in my opinion, I think he definitely would have made a fantastic guest to have on these shows. If he was still alive today, though, he would be he would be 100 years old. He was born back in 1922. So either way, I think he would have made a great guest to talk about this whole case if he was still alive today. Guy Playfair remained an active researcher, author, and SPR council member almost until his death. I don't know why the almost is there. Until his death in 2018 at the age of 83. He vigorously defended the legitimacy of the investigation and the claims of paranormal. Jeez, keep having problems saying that word. Paranormal. You know what? Just forget it. In 2007, he took the Times to task for making unfounded comments about the case. Playfair also pointed to support from the academic community for his comparisons of features of the case with Tourette's syndrome. Mary Rose Barrington, another member of the SPR, passed away on February 20th, 2020, at the age of 94. While many have expressed their doubts over the family's experience, Graham Morris, now 66, who is still a photographer, stands by what he saw in the house. I've no idea what anyone out there is saying, and they can say what they like, he says. I don't look at doubters, as I know what I saw. Peggy Hodgson remained in the house until her death on October 14, 2003, at the age of 73, the same day as Grosse's death 3 years later. She avoided publicity after the disturbances subsided in 1978, but never changed her position about the anomalous nature of what she had experienced. Sadly, as for one of the Hodgson siblings, the brother, in fact, Johnny Hodgson, tragically died of cancer in 1981 at the age of 14. Yeah, that's really sad for him. Only 14 years old, and he passed away. And having cancer. So, as you can see, a lot of the people here, including, poor Johnny, most of which now have except with the exception of Graham Morris, everyone else here has passed away. Now, according to sources about the other brother, Billy, now 51, lives in Essex, shying himself away from the public eye, but living close to his sisters. And now as for the sisters themselves, both Janet, now 57, and Margaret, now 59, have made several television experiences in subsequent years, where they continue to insist on the authenticity of their experiences and on the genuineness of the phenomena. In fact, Janet said in a 2011 newspaper article, years later when Mom was alive, there was always a presence there, something watching over you. She also mentioned having played with an Ouija board before the trouble flared up. She said that she had been unaware that she went into trances until shown the photographs. I knew when the voices were happening, of course. It felt like something was behind me all of the time. They did all sorts of tests, filling my mouth with water and so on, but the voices still came out. The levitation was scary because you didn't know where you were going to land. I remember a curtain being wound up around my neck. I was screaming. I thought I was going to die. In 2015, Janet said in another interview, I felt used by a force that nobody understands. I really don't like to think about it too much. She went on. It lived off me, off my energy. Call me mad if you like. Those events did happen. Yeah, it would be an amazing interview, Rachel. Definitely would. After Peggy Hodgson died, the house was briefly occupied by the mother of four, Claire Bennett, which I couldn't find a photo of. Oh, and this is something actually, Rachel, I think you're going to find interesting. They too reported strange incidents. Excuse me, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a sec. They too reported strange incidents, including hearing voices downstairs and encountering a man walking into the rooms. Claire stated, I didn't see anything, but I felt uncomfortable. There was definitely some kind of presence in the house. I always felt like someone was looking at me. Her sons would wake up in the night hearing people talking downstairs. Bennett then found out about the house's history. Suddenly, it all made sense, she said. The family moved out just after 2 months, according to Daily Mail. The family's claims of something paranormal being present in the house lasted all the way up until Peggy's death, at which time Janet's brother, Billy, moved out of the house and remained largely indifferent to the events. Janet, sadly, believe it or not, I'm sure a lot of you guys don't know this, she also lost a child herself, a son who died in his sleep in 2002 at the age of 18. She says that she didn't want to resurrect the painful memories of the Enfield poltergeist events when her mother was alive, but that she is now ready to tell her story. As far as the Enfield house today, as well as for Janet and Margaret, 45 years later, Janet and Margaret say that while they've managed to move on from the traumatic time in their life, the haunting, it stays with you every step of the way, Margaret told People. It's just like a death, really. It gets a little bit easier as time goes on, but the fear and memories of it and what happened never leaves you. And that is officially it. So let me just go back to the comments really quickly because I know I got to get off of here. All right, what's going on, Jeremy? Good to see you. Let's see Eric's like, that's the whole problem with faking some of it. How are you supposed to believe any of it? You're absolutely correct on that, Eric, because when you combine faking and real paranormal activity, not only does that make it harder for people to believe, but more importantly, it makes it even more difficult to even think if it's really a haunted house case. Yep, and see, Eric just put it out. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, it is. The house is private. The people that own it has not had any type of activity. Jill, you're late. Great present. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. All right, well, this is just before we get off here, and I know I often do this a lot. It's been a while, actually, since I've done this. Before we get off, I think it's important that I show a quick movie trailer because I did this for the first one. I'm actually getting up right now. Just give me 1 second here. Sorry, I was in such a hurry earlier today that I didn't really get all the links up. But just before we get off, I'm going to share the screen because I think it's worth showing the trailer for Conjuring 2. So give me just 1 second here. And oh, wait a minute, I can't do it this way. Okay. All right. And then once after this, I got to get off here. All right, so here is the trailer for Conjuring 2. I'm sure a lot of us have seen it, but I think it's still worth showing.
This is my home. Get out now. No, this is not your house. Now, what's your name? My name is Bill Wilkins, and I'm 72 years old.
What do you make of that voice? Sounds confused. Do you see now?
The voice on this tape is coming from an 11-year-old girl.
They're calling it England's Amityville. There is a family that desperately needs our help.
After everything we've seen, there isn't much that rattles either of us anymore. But this one still haunts me. Does it feel like the voice is coming from inside you?
More like it's coming from behind me. Like I'm being used.
Janet, are you all right?
Stop calling me
Janet. She's such a good girl. What's so wrong with her?
An oppressing spirit will try to force you to commit the ultimate sin.
Well, what's that?
Murder, suicide, or both.
You believe us, don't you?
Sensing a presence?
I'm not sensing anything. All I can sense is their own fear.
Honey, you're bleeding. What is happening?
I had a premonition of your death.
Who's that?
The family's just a pawn. Something inhuman wants to kill you. If we keep doing this, you're going to die.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing compared to like the actual event itself, but it's still a good film. Eric, let's see here. Yeah, they really did. They really did. All right. Well, unfortunately, I got to get off. Guys, thank you so much for this because for sticking around and hanging out. This was definitely a presentation that I was really looking forward to presenting. Hopefully, I don't get copyright for this later on for the film I was showing earlier. Let's see very quickly what Jill just wrote. Get a strong sense vibes from this case, so take that for what it's worth. Only the people involved really know the experience, whether temporary or fleeting. Thank you. Oh, jeez. Thank you, Jill. Very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. As I always say before, guys, in the end, I don't really do this. I mean, I do. It's a lot of work putting these together. I don't really do this for myself. I do it for you guys to enjoy. I always feel very happy when, you guys are enjoying these presentations. I've always said, I probably said this before previously, but if I'm even able to get at least one person who likes this show, that means I've done something right. So I can't thank you guys enough for this. So, and I can tell you guys this very quickly because I know I got to get off because there's a show waiting, but we got quite a number of presentations that I've already put together and still working on as of right now. We got a lot of them. I think season 2 is going to be there's going to be a lot more slideshows of season 2 than were for season 1. If I'm correct on this whole thing, the way how I see it, these slideshows probably going to last all the way up to the end of the summer. So there's going to be a lot more coming. So this is like kind of just the beginning. So I can assure all of you that with more slideshows coming up and what I'm going to be presenting. I mean, I'm kind of already thinking about it now, but when I have these with new shows coming up, I'm going to say that's when I think a lot of us are going to get excited. Okay. So for next week's show, we're going to follow one more case that's obviously, in the Conjuring universe. And I think it's very important considering that I've covered 2 of these cases that are involved in the Conjuring. I think it's important that we should focus on the shocking true story behind, with the shocking true story of Annabelle, the doll. I already got the slideshow completed for it, so it's all ready to go. So that's what we'll be focusing on for next week's episode. So first episode featuring a haunted doll. So it should be very, very interesting. Although surprisingly, it's not a very long story as it's sometimes portrayed involving this doll. So I don't know if I'm going to see a part 2 coming out of it, but we'll see. We'll see. Natalie, thank you so much. Definitely. I always appreciate it, guys, but unfortunately I got to get off here. I'll be on tomorrow night for Supernatural Talk, and it'll be just as good of a show. So thank you all so much. Again, I always appreciate it. Now I'm getting it. Now I got something in my eye, so I got to get off here now. Thank you guys so much again. And I'll see some of you guys tomorrow night for Supernatural Talk. But as usual, if you want to wait till next episode of Nick Files, then I guess I'll see some of you guys next week. You guys all have a great night.